At Ridgewood High, life moved in its usual rhythm. The hallways buzzed with the chatter of students between classes, lockers slammed shut, and teachers hurried to their next lesson. Among the daily chaos was Mr. Thompson, a man whose presence was both comforting and unassuming. He wasn't one of the flashy figures at the school. He didn't stand at the front of classrooms or lead pep rallies, but he had been part of Ridgewood for over a decade. Everyone knew him as the janitor, the guy who kept the floors clean, the lights working, and the building running smoothly. Mr. Thompson wasn't just any janitor, though. He carried himself with a quiet dignity that made people feel at ease. His warm smile greeted students in the mornings, and his calm demeanor often helped diffuse tense situations when kids argued in the halls. Some students would stop to chat with him during breaks, asking about his day or sharing stories about their own lives. To them, he wasn't just someone who cleaned up after them. He was a friend, a listener, and sometimes even a confidant. But despite this connection, most people didn't think much beyond his role as a janitor. They assumed they knew everything there was to know about him. Ridgewood High prided itself on academic excellence, and nowhere was this more evident than in its math department. The advanced calculus class, taught by Mr. Peterson, was notorious for being one of the toughest courses in the school. Students groaned when they saw the syllabus at the start of the year, knowing full well they were signing up for late-night study sessions and endless practice problems. Mr. Peterson, a tall man with thinning hair and a sharp tongue, ruled his classroom with an iron fist. He pushed his students hard, expecting nothing less than perfection. While some admired his dedication, others found him intimidating and occasionally downright mean. One crisp autumn afternoon, the calculus class gathered in room 204, a room filled with rows of desks and a large whiteboard at the front. Today's lesson focused on integrals, a topic that left many students scratching their heads. As Mr. Peterson wrote a particularly tricky problem on the board, the tension in the air grew thicker. One by one, he called on students to attempt a solution, only to watch them falter under pressure. Frustration bubbled beneath his surface, and his patience began to wear thin. Meanwhile, outside the classroom, Mr. Thompson wheeled his cleaning cart down the hallway. He paused near the door of room 204, listening absently to the muffled sounds of pencils scratching and voices rising in confusion. It wasn't unusual for him to pass by while lessons were underway, but something about today felt different. Little did he, or anyone else, know that this ordinary moment was about to become extraordinary. As the minutes ticked by, the frustration inside the classroom reached a boiling point. Mr. Peterson snapped at his students, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Come on, people. This isn't rocket science," he barked, pacing back and forth. Just then, his eyes landed on Mr. Thompson through the open doorway. In a split second, a cruel idea formed in his mind. An idea that would soon change everything. Mr. Peterson's frustration was reaching its peak. The calculus problem on the board, a gnarly integral that required multiple steps and careful thinking, had stumped every student he called upon. Each attempt ended in failure, with erasers squeaking against the whiteboard as mistakes were hastily wiped away. Some students slouched in their seats, avoiding eye contact, while others stared blankly at their notebooks, hoping they wouldn't be next. The air in the room felt heavy, charged with tension. Just then, Mr. Peterson glanced toward the open door and spotted Mr. Thompson standing there, mop in hand, quietly observing the scene. To Mr. Peterson, it seemed like the perfect opportunity to vent his irritation. With a smirk curling at the corners of his mouth, he pointed dramatically toward the janitor. "Well, if you're so smart, why don't you come up here and solve it?" he said loudly, his voice dripping with sarcasm. The entire class froze. For a moment, there was complete silence, followed by nervous laughter from some of the students. They thought it was just another one of Mr. Peterson's biting jokes, a way to lighten the mood after a string of failed attempts. After all, everyone knew who Mr. Thompson was, the friendly janitor who kept the school clean and running smoothly. No one expected him to actually respond, let alone take the challenge seriously. To them, this was just part of the teacher's usual antics. But Mr. Thompson didn't laugh. Instead, he paused, his expression unreadable. He set his mop aside carefully, as though considering what to do next. Then, without saying a word, he stepped into the classroom. His movements were deliberate, calm, almost regal. The laughter faded quickly as the students realized something unusual was happening. Even Mr. Peterson looked surprised, though he tried to mask it with a dismissive chuckle. "Oh, come on, Mr. Thompson," he said, still clinging to his joke. "Don't tell me you're going to give it a shot." Ignoring the murmurs around him, Mr. Thompson walked straight to the front of the room. He picked up a piece of chalk, his fingers brushing lightly over the smooth surface of the board. Without hesitation, he began writing. At first, the students watched skeptically, exchanging glances and whispering among themselves. But as the numbers and symbols started appearing, something remarkable happened. The scribbles weren't random or hesitant. They were precise, confident, and undeniably correct. Step by step, Mr. Thompson worked through the problem, explaining his process aloud in a steady, clear voice. "First, we need to break this down into simpler parts," he said, drawing a line beneath the original equation. "Then we apply the power rule here." His words flowed effortlessly, each explanation building on the last. As he continued, the skepticism in the room gave way to awe. Students leaned forward in their seats, their eyes glued to the board. Even Mr. Peterson stopped fidgeting and stood silently, watching intently. By the time Mr. Thompson reached the final answer, the room was utterly silent. He turned to face the class, his expression calm but firm. "There," he said simply, setting the chalk back down on the tray. "That's how you solve it." For a few seconds, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Then, slowly, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Some students exchanged wide-eyed looks, while others whispered excitedly to their neighbors. A few clapped hesitantly, unsure how else to react. Mr. Peterson, meanwhile, looked visibly shaken. His cheeks flushed red, and he shifted uncomfortably, clearly regretting his earlier comment. What had started as a sarcastic jab had turned into something far more profound. An unexpected lesson, not just in calculus, but in humility, respect, and the danger of underestimating others. As Mr. Thompson returned to his cleaning cart, the weight of the moment lingered in the air. The students couldn't stop talking about what they'd witnessed, their minds racing with questions. Who was this man? How did he know so much about math? And why, despite working as a janitor, could he solve problems that even the brightest students struggled with? Little did they know, the answers would soon reveal themselves and change their perceptions forever. The classroom buzzed with energy after Mr. Thompson stepped away from the whiteboard. Students exchanged glances, their faces a mix of disbelief, admiration, and curiosity. No one could quite process what had just happened. A man they'd always seen pushing a mop and emptying trash cans had effortlessly solved a problem that left even the brightest students scratching their heads. It was as if a magician had walked into their ordinary world and performed an incredible trick. But this wasn't magic. This was skill, knowledge, and years of experience wrapped up in the unassuming figure of their school janitor. As the initial shock began to settle, a few brave students approached Mr. Thompson, while he quietly resumed tidying up near the door. "Mr. Thompson," one of them asked hesitantly, "how did you? Where did you learn all that?" The question hung in the air, filled with equal parts awe and confusion. Others gathered around, eager to hear his response, but unsure how to phrase their own thoughts without sounding rude or intrusive. For a moment, Mr. Thompson didn't answer. He leaned against his cleaning cart, his hands resting lightly on the handlebars. His eyes scanned the group of teenagers before him, each face brimming with curiosity. Finally, he let out a soft sigh and gave a small smile. "It's a long story," he said slowly, his voice calm and measured. but I suppose it's only fair to share some of it now." He paused, collecting his thoughts, then began speaking. "Years ago, I wasn't a janitor. I used to teach math. Advanced math. At a university." Gasps rippled through the crowd of students. One boy blurted out, "You were a asterisk professor asterisk." Another chimed in, "Wait, like college-level stuff?" Mr. Thompson nodded, his expression tinged with both pride and sadness. "Yes," he replied simply. "I spent most of my life studying and teaching mathematics, but things changed, and eventually I decided to step away from that world." His words sparked a flurry of questions. "Why did you leave?" someone asked cautiously. Mr. Thompson's smile faded slightly, replaced by a look of quiet reflection. "Let's just say it wasn't easy being who I am in that environment," he explained. "There were challenges, things that made me realize it wasn't the right place for me anymore. So I chose a simpler path. Being a janitor doesn't require dealing with politics or expectations. It lets me focus on doing honest work." The students listened intently, hanging on every word. They couldn't imagine walking away from such a prestigious career, especially not to take on a job many people overlooked. Yet there was something deeply admirable about Mr. Thompson's choice. He hadn't let bitterness consume him. Instead, he carried himself with grace and purpose, no matter the role he played. One girl raised her hand timidly, as though she were still in class. "Do you miss teaching?" she asked. Mr. Thompson chuckled softly. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Math has always been my passion, but I found joy in other ways too. Like helping keep this school running smoothly so you all can focus on your studies." His humility struck a chord with everyone present. Here was a man who had achieved greatness yet chose to live humbly, content with contributing in whatever way he could. As the bell rang, signaling the end of the period, the students reluctantly returned to their seats, their minds swirling with newfound respect for the man they once thought they knew. Word spread quickly throughout the school. By lunchtime, nearly every student seemed to be talking about Mr. Thompson's hidden talent. Some joked about signing up for janitor-led tutoring sessions, while others expressed genuine interest in learning more from him. Teachers whispered among themselves, wondering how they hadn't noticed his brilliance sooner. And Mr. Peterson. He avoided eye contact with Mr. Thompson whenever their paths crossed, guilt weighing heavily on his shoulders. But for Mr. Thompson, life went on much as it always had. He continued his rounds, mopping floors and fixing broken locks, seemingly unfazed by the attention. Still, the seeds of change had been planted. What started as a sarcastic remark had uncovered a truth that would ripple through Ridgewood High, challenging perceptions and inspiring countless lives, including those of the very people who had underestimated him. The revelation about Mr. Thompson's past began to spread like wildfire through Ridgewood High. By the next day, it felt as though everyone, from freshmen to seniors, teachers to cafeteria staff, was talking about the janitor who had once been a university math professor. Whispers echoed in the hallways. "Did you hear? He used to teach advanced calculus," or "I can't believe we didn't know this before." Students couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and guilt. How could they have dismissed him as just the janitor for so long? The realization that he carried such extraordinary knowledge beneath his humble exterior left many feeling both inspired and humbled. Curiosity quickly turned into action. A group of students decided to approach Mr. Thompson during lunchtime, hoping to learn more about his story, and maybe even ask for his help with their own math struggles. They found him in the corner of the school courtyard, sitting on a bench under a shady tree, eating a sandwich. His presence was calm and unassuming, yet there was an undeniable air of wisdom around him. As the students approached nervously, he looked up and smiled warmly, inviting them to sit. "Mr. Thompson," one boy began hesitantly, "we were wondering, would you ever consider helping us with our math homework? Like tutoring or something?" The others nodded eagerly, their eyes wide with hope. At first, Mr. Thompson seemed taken aback by the request. He leaned back slightly, folding his hands in his lap, and studied their faces thoughtfully. "I don't know," he said finally, his tone gentle but cautious. "Teaching again. Well, it's not something I planned on doing." The students exchanged worried glances, afraid he might say no. But then another voice spoke up, a quiet girl who rarely participated in class discussions. "Please, Mr. Thompson," she said softly, her words carrying a sincerity that caught everyone off guard. "We really need your help. Some of us are struggling, and no one explains things the way you did yesterday." It made sense for the first time. Her honesty struck a chord with Mr. Thompson. He sighed deeply, his gaze drifting toward the distant horizon, as if weighing his options. After a long pause, he nodded slowly. "All right," he said, his voice firm but kind. "If you're serious about learning, I'll do what I can. But let's make one thing clear. I'm not doing this because I want attention or praise. I'm here because I believe in the power of education. If I can help you understand something new, then it's worth my time." The students erupted into quiet cheers, careful not to draw too much attention from passersby. Over the next few days, a small but dedicated group began meeting with Mr. Thompson after school in an unused classroom. Word traveled fast, and soon more students joined, eager to benefit from his expertise. What started as a handful of kids quickly grew into a mini tutoring session, with students bringing notebooks, textbooks, and laptops filled with questions. Mr. Thompson's teaching style was unlike anything they'd experienced before. He didn't rely on strict formulas or intimidating lectures. Instead, he broke down complex concepts into simple, relatable terms. "Think of it like building a house," he explained during one session, using a metaphor to describe algebraic equations. "You start with the foundation, the basics, and build upward step by step. Rushing ahead without understanding the groundwork will only lead to problems later." His patience and creativity made even the most challenging topics accessible, and his encouraging words boosted their confidence. As the weeks went by, something remarkable happened. Students who had once dreaded math started looking forward to solving problems. Grades improved, and the fear of failure began to fade. More importantly, the sessions fostered a sense of community among the participants. They weren't just classmates anymore. They were teammates, working together to conquer a subject that had once seemed impossible. But Mr. Thompson's influence extended beyond academics. Through his actions, he taught them lessons about humility, resilience, and the importance of seeing people for who they truly are, not just the roles society assigns them. Every time he patiently guided a struggling student or shared a piece of his life story, he reminded them that greatness often hides in unexpected places. And as the school watched this quiet transformation unfold, it became clear that Mr. Thompson wasn't just changing grades, he was changing lives. As the weeks turned into months, Mr. Thompson's tutoring sessions became the talk of Ridgewood High. What had started as a small group of curious students meeting after school quickly grew into something much bigger. Students from all grade levels began showing up, dragging their notebooks and calculators along with them, hoping to soak up some of the wisdom this unassuming janitor so generously shared. The unused classroom where they gathered transformed into a hub of learning and camaraderie, buzzing with energy every afternoon. Mr. Thompson handled the growing crowd with his characteristic calmness. He welcomed everyone who walked through the door, no matter their skill level or confidence. Some came because they were failing math and desperate for help. Others simply wanted to challenge themselves further. Regardless of their reasons, Mr. Thompson treated each student with respect and care. He never made anyone feel inferior, even when mistakes were made. Instead, he turned errors into lessons, saying things like, "Mistakes are just stepping stones to understanding. Don't fear them. Learn from them." His approach worked wonders. Students who had once dreaded opening their math books now found themselves excited to tackle problems. One senior named Marcus, who had nearly given up on passing calculus altogether, proudly showed Mr. Thompson a graded test with a B+ scrawled at the top. I couldn't have done it without you, Marcus said, beaming. Mr. Thompson simply smiled and replied, You did it yourself. I just pointed you in the right direction. Word of these success stories eventually reached the ears of the school administration. Principal Lewis, curious about the buzz surrounding Mr. Thompson, decided to sit in on one of the tutoring sessions. She slipped into the back of the room unnoticed, watching as Mr. Thompson guided a group of students through a particularly tricky geometry problem. His explanations were clear and engaging, drawing nods of understanding from even the most hesitant learners. By the end of the session, Principal Lewis approached him, her expression thoughtful. Mr. Thompson, she began, what you're doing here is incredible. Have you ever thought about teaching again? Officially, I mean. He hesitated, caught off guard by the question. Teaching wasn't something he had considered since leaving academia years ago. But seeing the eager faces of the students and knowing how much they needed guidance, he found himself reconsidering. Maybe, he said finally, his voice measured. But only if it's something the students truly want. This isn't about me. It's about them. Principal Lewis nodded, impressed by his humility. Over the next few days, she discussed the idea with other faculty members, including Mr. Peterson, whose guilt over his earlier behavior had grown into genuine admiration for Mr. Thompson. Together, they proposed offering him a part-time position teaching advanced math courses. It wouldn't require him to give up his duties as a janitor entirely. He could still balance both roles, but it would allow him to share his expertise with a wider audience. When Principal Lewis presented the offer to Mr. Thompson, he took several days to think it over. He knew stepping back into a formal teaching role would bring challenges, especially given his past experiences. But he also recognized an opportunity to make a real difference, not just for individual students, but for the entire school culture. Finally, he agreed, though with one condition. If I'm going to do this, we need to focus on creating an environment where everyone feels valued. Math is for everyone, not just the smart kids. The announcement sent waves of excitement through Ridgewood High. Flyers went up around campus advertising Mr. Thompson's new advanced math class, and within days, the course was filled to capacity. Students clamored to enroll, eager to learn from the man who had already changed so many lives. Even those who weren't enrolled looked forward to crossing paths with him in the hallways, knowing that any conversation, even a brief one, could spark inspiration. For Mr. Thompson, returning to teaching felt like coming home, albeit in a different way than before. He brought his unique perspective to the classroom, blending academic rigor with heartfelt encouragement. And while the spotlight shone brightly on him, he remained steadfast in deflecting praise. It's not about me, he often reminded his students. It's about what you choose to do with what you've learned. Slowly but surely, the impact of his work began to ripple outward. As students excelled under his guidance, teachers across disciplines adopted his patient, inclusive methods. The entire school seemed to shift, becoming a place where effort was celebrated as much as achievement, and where everyone, regardless of background or title, was seen for their potential rather than their label. Mr. Peterson hadn't slept well since the day he made that sarcastic remark to Mr. Thompson. The memory replayed in his mind like a broken record, each loop filling him with more guilt than the last. He couldn't shake the image of Mr. Thompson stepping up to the board, calm and composed, solving a problem that had stumped everyone else, including himself. What weighed on him even more was the realization that his careless words could have easily pushed someone as kind and dignified as Mr. Thompson further into the shadows. Instead, Mr. Thompson had responded with grace, turning what could have been a moment of humiliation into one of inspiration. One afternoon, after another long day of teaching, Mr. Peterson decided it was time to face the truth. He found Mr. Thompson in the school's supply closet, organizing cleaning materials. Knocking lightly on the open door, Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. Mr. Thompson, do you have a minute?" Mr. Thompson turned, surprised but polite. "Of course, Mr. Peterson. What can I do for you?" For a moment, Mr. Peterson hesitated, unsure where to begin. Then, taking a deep breath, he said, "I owe you an apology. What I said that day in class, it was wrong. I was frustrated, and I took it out on you in a way that wasn't fair or respectful. You didn't deserve that." Mr. Thompson studied him for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Thank you for saying that," he replied quietly. "Apologies aren't easy, and I appreciate your honesty." Relieved but still uneasy, Mr. Peterson pressed on. "I've been thinking about everything you've done since then, the tutoring sessions, the way you've inspired these kids, and I realize how much I underestimated you. Not just your knowledge, but your character. It's humbling, really." To his surprise, Mr. Thompson chuckled softly. "We all make mistakes, Mr. Peterson. What matters is what we do next. And if you're willing to learn from this, then that's all anyone can ask for." The sincerity in Mr. Thompson's voice struck a chord with Mr. Peterson. For the first time in weeks, he felt a glimmer of hope, not just for himself, but for their relationship. Inspired by Mr. Thompson's forgiveness, he decided to take things a step further. Over the next few days, he began attending the after-school tutoring sessions, not as a teacher observing his students, but as a participant eager to learn. At first, the students were stunned to see their strict calculus teacher sitting among them, asking questions and jotting notes like any other student. Some snickered behind their hands, while others exchanged wide-eyed glances, but Mr. Peterson didn't let their reactions deter him. If anything, he leaned into the discomfort, determined to prove that learning never truly ends, even for someone in his position. Mr. Thompson welcomed him warmly, treating him no differently than the rest of the group. "It's good to see you here, Mr. Peterson," he said with a smile during one session. "Math isn't just for students, it's for anyone who wants to understand the world better." As the weeks went by, something remarkable happened. Mr. Peterson changed. His interactions with students became less rigid and more collaborative. He started incorporating some of Mr. Thompson's methods into his own lessons, focusing on breaking down complex ideas into manageable steps and encouraging questions instead of shutting them down. Slowly, the tension between him and his students began to ease, replaced by mutual respect. Their evolving friendship also grew stronger. During breaks between tutoring sessions, Mr. Peterson and Mr. Thompson would often chat about teaching philosophies, personal experiences, and even life outside of school. They discovered they had more in common than either had expected. Both valued education deeply, though they approached it from different angles. Their conversations became a source of growth for both men, helping them reflect on their roles within the school community. By the end of the semester, the transformation was undeniable. Mr. Peterson wasn't just a better teacher, he was a better person. And while he knew he could never fully repay Mr. Thompson for the lesson he'd learned, he vowed to pay it forward, to treat others with the same kindness and humility that Mr. Thompson had shown him. In doing so, he became part of the ripple effect, spreading through Ridgewood High, proving that even the smallest acts of courage and compassion could create lasting change. As the school year progressed, Mr. Thompson's influence continued to grow, touching every corner of Ridgewood High in ways both big and small. His advanced math classes quickly became the most sought-after courses, with students signing up months in advance just to secure a spot. But it wasn't just about numbers or equations, it was about the way he taught. Every lesson felt like an invitation to explore, to question, and to discover. He made math feel alive, relevant, and accessible, even for those who had once been intimidated by it. What set Mr. Thompson apart was his ability to connect with his students on a deeper level. He didn't see them as mere names on a roster. He saw individuals with unique strengths, struggles, and dreams. Before each class, he would take a few moments to check in with his students, not just about their homework, but about their lives. "How's your mom doing?" he might ask one student whose family was going through a tough time. Or, "Did you finish that book I recommended?" to another who loved literature as much as math. These small gestures showed his students that they mattered beyond their grades, fostering a sense of belonging that many hadn't experienced before. The impact extended far beyond academics. Students began carrying themselves differently. They stood taller, spoke more confidently, and approached challenges with renewed determination. One sophomore named Alina, who had always doubted her abilities, surprised herself by winning second place in a regional math competition. When she accepted her award, tears streaming down her face, she dedicated it to Mr. Thompson. "He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself," she said during her acceptance speech. "And because of him, I know now that I can do anything I set my mind to." Word of Mr. Thompson's success reached beyond the walls of Ridgewood High. Local newspapers wrote articles about the janitor-turned-teacher who had transformed a struggling math program into one of the best in the district. Parents praised the school for recognizing his talents, while educators from neighboring districts visited to observe his teaching methods firsthand. Even alumni took notice, sharing stories online about how his quiet encouragement had stayed with them long after graduation. But perhaps the most profound change came within the faculty itself. Inspired by Mr. Thompson's example, teachers across subjects began rethinking their approaches. English teachers started incorporating real-world writing prompts to engage reluctant readers. Science instructors introduced hands-on experiments to spark curiosity. And art teachers encouraged students to express themselves freely without fear of judgment. The entire school culture shifted toward inclusivity, collaboration, and mutual respect, a testament to the ripple effect of one person's kindness and dedication. Principal Lewis often reflected on how much the school had changed since Mr. Thompson stepped into his dual role. She realized that hiring him wasn't just about filling a need. It was about embracing the values he represented. Under her leadership, Ridgewood High launched initiatives aimed at celebrating diversity, encouraging lifelong learning, and breaking down barriers between staff and students. Monthly meetings were held where everyone, from administrators to custodians, could share ideas and concerns openly. It was a bold step, but one that brought the community closer together. By springtime, Mr. Thompson had become more than a teacher or a janitor. He was a symbol of hope and possibility. On career day, dozens of students lined up to talk to him, eager to hear his advice not just about math but about life. "Don't let anyone tell you what you're capable of," he told them earnestly. "Your worth isn't defined by a title or a job description. It's defined by the effort you put into everything you do, and the kindness you show to others." As the final weeks of the school year approached, preparations began for the annual award ceremony. This year, however, there was a special addition, a new honor called the Inspirational Award, created specifically to recognize individuals who embodied the spirit of resilience, humility, and service. Unsurprisingly, the inaugural recipient was none other than Mr. Thompson. When his name was announced, the auditorium erupted into thunderous applause, with students, teachers, and staff rising to their feet in a standing ovation. For Mr. Thompson, the recognition was bittersweet. He accepted the award graciously, using the moment to remind everyone that true success lies not in accolades, but in making a difference. As he stepped off the stage, surrounded by smiling faces and heartfelt congratulations, he couldn't help but feel grateful for the second chance he'd been given, and for the countless lives he'd helped shape along the way. As graduation day approached, the atmosphere at Ridgewood High was electric with anticipation. Seniors buzzed with excitement about the future, while underclassmen looked on with a mix of envy and nostalgia. For many students, this year had been unlike any other, thanks in no small part to Mr. Thompson. His presence had left an indelible mark on the school, shaping not only how they saw math, but also how they viewed themselves and the world around them. On the morning of graduation, Ridgewood's auditorium was packed with proud parents, teachers, and friends. The air was thick with emotion as students filed onto the stage one by one to receive their diplomas. But when it came time for the valedictorian speech, something extraordinary happened. Instead of focusing solely on personal achievements or future aspirations, the student speaker dedicated a significant portion of her remarks to Mr. Thompson. "Before we leave today," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "I want to take a moment to thank someone who has changed all of our lives forever, Mr. Thompson. When I first walked into his classroom, I didn't think math would ever make sense to me. But he didn't just teach us formulas. He taught us perseverance, humility, and the power of believing in ourselves. Because of him, I'm standing here today, not just as a graduate, but as someone who knows that greatness isn't defined by titles or roles. It's defined by the impact you have on others." Her words struck a chord, and soon the entire audience rose to their feet in applause. Cameras flashed as people turned to look at Mr. Thompson, who sat quietly near the back of the room, visibly moved. He waved off the attention modestly, but there was no denying the pride in his eyes. Later that evening, during the senior farewell party, several students sought him out to express their gratitude personally. One boy handed him a handmade card signed by nearly every member of his calculus class. Inside, they had written messages like, "You made me believe I could do anything," and "Thank you for showing us what real strength looks like." Another student gave him a framed photo of the group gathered in the tutoring room, smiling and holding up their graded assignments, a testament to how far they'd come under his guidance. But Mr. Thompson wasn't the only one reflecting on the changes he'd inspired. Teachers and staff found themselves reevaluating their own roles within the school community. Conversations sparked about creating more opportunities for collaboration among faculty members and finding ways to celebrate hidden talents, whether in students, colleagues, or even themselves. Principal Lewis announced plans to establish a mentorship program pairing struggling students with supportive adults, modeled after the informal relationships Mr. Thompson had built so naturally. Even Mr. Peterson, once skeptical and harsh, emerged as a vocal advocate for change. During a meeting with new hires before the start of the next school year, he shared his journey of growth, crediting Mr. Thompson for helping him see the value of empathy and lifelong learning. "We're not just educators," he told the group earnestly. "We're role models. Every word we say, every action we take, it matters. And if we can approach our work with the same kindness and dedication that Mr. Thompson shows every day, then we'll truly be making a difference." By the time summer arrived, Ridgewood High felt transformed. The hallways seemed brighter, the classrooms livelier, and the overall spirit warmer than ever before. While Mr. Thompson continued balancing his duties as both a janitor and a teacher, he carried himself with a quiet confidence, knowing he had sparked something enduring. New initiatives were underway to ensure that the lessons of inclusivity, resilience, and mutual respect would continue long after he retired. When the new school year began, a plaque was unveiled in the main hallway bearing these words, *To Mr. Thompson, for reminding us that intelligence knows no boundaries and greatness resides in the hearts of those who uplift others. Students passing by would often pause to read it, some snapping photos to share with friends or family. It served as a constant reminder of the impact one person could have and the legacy that kindness and humility could leave behind. As Mr. Thompson stood on stage during the annual welcome assembly, gazing out at the sea of eager faces, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He hadn't set out to change the world. He'd simply wanted to help where he could. Yet, in doing so, he had ignited a chain reaction of positivity that would ripple through generations of Ridgewood students. And though he knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, he believed wholeheartedly in the potential of every individual to rise above challenges and create meaningful change. In the end, Mr. Thompson's story wasn't just about solving equations or breaking